5 prime ministers in less than 2 years. That number alone tells you something has gone badly wrong. Not a scandal, not a war, not a sudden shock, just the slow, grinding arithmetic of a country caught between what it promised its people and what it can actually afford to deliver. France is not in freefall, but it is stuck, and the longer it stays stuck, the harder the eventual landing becomes. To understand how it got here, you have to start not with politics, but with demographics, because the political chaos is really just a symptom. More than 1 in 5 French citizens are now over the age of 65. The figure? 15 million people, representing 22% of the population, more than double the global average. By 2070, that share is projected to climb to nearly 30%. And buried inside that projection is a detail that rarely gets enough attention. France will soon have as many people over 75 as it currently has over 65. That distinction matters. A 65-year-old can often still work, still contribute, still carry some of their own weight. A 75-year-old, statistically speaking, cannot. The economic burden compounds with every year of additional life, and France has built a system that is exceptionally good at keeping people alive. Life expectancy in France sits above 83 years, one of the highest in the European Union. That is, by any human measure, a triumph. But it has become a structural problem that no one in power seems willing to confront directly. The very success of the French social model is now slowly suffocating it. France's public spending stands at 57.2% of GDP, among the highest in the entire European Union, nearly 15 points above the OECD average of 42.6% and almost 20 points above the United States. Of that, roughly 32% of GDP flows exclusively into social protection. The pension system at the center of this is pay-as-you-go, meaning today's workers fund today's retirees in real time. For every person over 65, there are currently around 2.6 people of working age supporting them. By 2070, that ratio is projected to fall to just 1.7. The math was always going to catch up. It just took longer than anyone wanted to admit. So France finds itself trapped between 2 exits, both of them politically radioactive. Option 1. Raise taxes. The problem is, there is almost no room left. The total tax burden on a single average French worker, income tax plus employee social contributions, sits at 28% of gross salary. But when you add the employer's share of social contributions, which average around 45% of gross salary, on top of whatever the worker earns, the total tax wedge reaches 47.2%, giving France the 3rd highest labor tax burden in the entire OECD. The result is some of the highest employment costs in the developed world, and that cost feeds directly into the country's other crisis: a generation of young people who simply cannot get hired. Option 2. Cut benefits. Logical in theory, catastrophic in practice. The French social safety net is not just a government program, it is a covenant. Generations of workers paid into a system on the explicit promise that it would be there when they needed it. When politicians move to alter that promise, France responds in the most French way imaginable. In 2023, when President Macron proposed raising the retirement age from 62 to 64, a change of just 2 years, the country erupted. Strikes shut down vital industries. Garbage went uncollected for weeks. Fuel stations ran dry as protesters blockaded depots across the country. Macron, unable to pass the reform through Parliament, reached for Article 49.3, a constitutional provision allowing the government to bypass a parliamentary vote, making the changes law by executive will. Nearly 80% of the French population considered the move unjustified. His approval ratings dropped to historic lows. And yet, by early 2026, even that hard-fought reform has been suspended. The retirement age is back at 62. The deficit reduction it was supposed to deliver is gone. postponed conveniently until after the next election. Another no-confidence vote was avoided, but at a cost economists describe as billions more added to an already spiraling deficit. The can, once again, has been kicked. This is the pattern that defines modern France. An impossible problem, a politician who promises to solve it, a public that refuses the solution, and a government that eventually folds. What makes the 5 prime ministers in 2 years figure so damning is not the chaos itself, it is what the chaos represents. Every collapsed government is another reform that didn't happen, another year of structural drift, another increment of debt. While the retirement crisis dominates the headlines, a quieter catastrophe is unfolding at the other end of the age spectrum. France has one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the developed world, and in 2023, 14.2% of French youth were classified as not in employment, education, or training, above the OECD average of 12.6%. This is strange for a country that claims to desperately need workers. The explanation lies in the same labor protections designed to keep workers secure. French employment contracts fall into 2 categories: the CDI, a permanent contract that offers near-total job security and is extremely difficult to terminate, and the CDD, a fixed-term temporary arrangement. For employers, the CDI is a commitment that carries enormous financial risk. Hire someone permanently in France, and you are not just paying their salary, you are paying their salary plus roughly 45% in social contributions on top, and accepting that removing them if things go wrong will be legally arduous and expensive. The rational response for businesses has been to stop hiring permanently. The result? A 2-tiered economy. On one side, an older skilled workforce entrenched in stable positions. On the other, young workers cycling through short-term contracts that offer no path forward. Over the past 2 decades, the share of new hires on fixed-term contracts lasting less than 1 month has grown from just under 50% to nearly 70%. The odds of converting a temporary contract into a permanent one sit between just 10% and 20%. Young people are not simply unemployed, they are trapped in a holding pattern, paying into a system they may never benefit from, subsidizing a retirement lifestyle they cannot themselves expect to access. At the top of the skills ladder, the dynamic inverts and gets worse. France's most educated workers are not locked out, they are leaving. Every year, thousands of engineers, doctors, and business graduates migrate to Switzerland, Britain, and the United States, drawn by lower taxes and higher salaries. Brain drain from a stagnating economy is not just a talent problem, it is a fiscal one. Every high earner who leaves is a gap in the tax base that someone else must fill. With taxation already maxed out, benefits politically untouchable, and its most productive citizens heading for the exits, France has done what governments always do when the other options disappear. It borrowed. France's debt to GDP ratio now stands at 113% as of end 2024, according to France's National Statistics Agency, INSEE, nearly double what it was before 2008. Goldman Sachs projects it will reach 118% by 2027. That spiral began after the global financial crisis, when France chose stimulus over austerity and never fully changed course. Then came a decade of near-zero interest rates that made borrowing feel essentially free. Then came the pandemic and the whatever-it-takes response that governments across the world reached for. What was manageable at zero interest rates is not manageable now. As the European Central Bank raised rates to fight inflation, France's interest bill followed. By 2024, interest charges on government debt reached 2% of GDP, around 59 billion euros, and are forecast to climb further. For context, that is roughly a sixth of France's entire defense budget, consumed by debt service alone. And unlike defense spending, the interest clock never stops. France is now subject to the EU's excessive deficit procedure. Its 2024 deficit came in at 5.8% of GDP, nearly double the Eurozone's 3% limit, and the EU is mandating it be brought to heel by 2029 or face fines and sanctions. That means austerity, the very thing the French government cannot politically survive. Somewhere in this bind lies a genuine tragedy. France has the largest nuclear energy base in Europe, a potential powerhouse in an era where AI data centers are hungry for clean, reliable electricity. The AI revolution could be an economic lifeline, but capitalizing on it requires tens of billions in investment, and France has neither the fiscal space nor the borrowing capacity to reach for it. An opportunity is sitting right in front of them, and their hands are tied. Then there's the bond market, which is perhaps the most striking signal of all. In November 2024, French 10-year bond yields briefly matched those of Greece, the first time in recorded history. Let that land for a moment. Greece nearly brought the entire Eurozone to its knees during the debt crisis of 2012, when its yields were more than 30 percentage points above France's. Today, the gap is zero. The difference is that Greece has spent the intervening years reforming, cutting, restructuring, clawing back credibility. France has not. Greece's debt-to-GDP ratio is on a downward trajectory. France's is rising. Investors are drawing their own conclusions. What makes France's situation so instructive and so uncomfortable is that it is not really a French story. Almost every major developed economy is wrestling with the same aging demographics, the same debt accumulation, the same tension between what citizens were promised and what governments can deliver. France just happens to have built its social contract on more explicit and more generous terms than most, which means the reckoning arrives faster, more visibly, and louder. The strikes, the fallen governments, the constitutional workarounds, these are not signs of dysfunction unique to France. They are a preview of what happens when any government runs out of painless options. The next French president will inherit a demographic time bomb, a structurally divided labor market, a debt load that constrains every meaningful policy response, and a public that has proven repeatedly it will not quietly accept the adjustments the numbers demand. The politicians will promise solutions. The public will reject the ones that hurt. And somewhere between those two immovable forces, the bill keeps growing. Something has to give. Which economy do you think faces this same reckoning next?